Hey, what's up guys? This is Jagger with Recon Circo. In today's video, we're going to be going over weapon camouflage and how to properly veg up a weapon system. So let's get into it. So step one, first thing you can kind of go over, if you're running a kind of plain or strictly black rifle or gun setup, I would recommend adding some sort of Cerakote or spray paint. Spray paint's the easiest and you can change it and it's very cost effective and stuff. This rifle here is spray painted. If you're interested on how you would spray paint a gun, we're also posting a video about that as well, so go check that video out if you're interested in spray painting your weapon. But once you have a painted gun, you still may have some parts that are black, right? My suppressor, my optic, parts on the light, buttons, that type of stuff is black. We're trying to eliminate as much of this black as possible, especially when we're talking about stalking up to an objective or being kind of compromised or anything in any type of environment. Black is going to easily compromise you compared to other colors. We're trying to keep them all flat and neutral to whatever environment you're going to be in. Okay, so once I have my gun, I'm going to be talking about adding your base layer of vegetation. For this case, we're going to be using some of this artificial kind of laser cut scrim from Concealing. I'll add their link in the bio as well if you guys are trying to get some of this. They basically come in 3-piece packs, and all I'm going to be doing, if you're running a suppressor, all right, stay away from that because this stuff could melt if you're shooting a lot, but just basically hook it in somewhere, and I'm just going to be starting to wrap this down the gun like so. As I wrap it, you can notice it may get snagged in spots, so sometimes I'll just ball it up in my hand, start to just wrap it around. Just give yourself kind of a good base layer. I'm only doing from near the muzzle to about that elevation turret on your scope. Don't do anything further back just yet. So start to wrap it around, give it kind of a good kind of base there. If you have any type of buttons or stuff you're trying to manipulate on that, make sure you leave them exposed or at least easy to grab onto when you're doing stuff. So here's my gun, get my scrim. The other thing that's cool about these guys, they have all sorts of colors. So here I have like a really tan kind of light color. Back here this is like a more of a coyote tan. They have ATAX, multicam, all sorts of colors that you can use to kind of match what you're doing in your environment. Biggest thing though when we talk about camouflaging a weapon is we want to go from light to dark. Just like when you're doing your ghillie suit, go from light to dark. Try to stay away from doing any of the dark woodland colors right off the bat. You know, just kind of blend them together. So like right here I got tan, I have coyote. I'm just wrapping it around this rifle, keeping it fairly tight to the gun, making sure that I don't wrap it over the optic to where it kind of masks what I can see out of that. And then I just take a piece of another color, start to wrap it all the way around that. Currently, for this setup, I'm up in the Pacific Northwest, so lots of trees, lots of vegetation, that type of stuff. So keeping it real light, and then I'm going to be adding kind of those hints of bright green and stuff in here as well to match that environment. And you don't have to use it all either, right? So for this, I'm going to stick mainly with the tan, just going right here to that elevation turret. If you go past that, you know, it's not the end of the world, but I have a lot of stuff going on right here on the weapon system, right? Rounds are going to be ejecting out of this. If I put stuff over that, it could kind of interfere there. I'm going to be loading mags in and out of my magazine well there, so wrapping it near this can kind of cause for unneeded malfunctions and stuff. So I find just kind of putting it right here near that elevation of windage turret, that's kind of the best place you can apply that veg to. Start to wrap it around here. Also, depending on what you're doing, you can wrap stuff around the suppressor. This laser cut stuff is actually pretty durable when it comes to heat, but just keep in mind that it can melt when you're applying a ton of rounds downrange. Just kind of doing that base layer as I go down the can, or if you got your barrel, same thing, base layer, and then I'm just bringing it all the way back down that barrel. When I do this too, I can leave a little kind of loose spot. If you guys don't have this scrim pack, you can easily make this scrim stuff out of old fabric and stuff with scissors by just basically taking a piece of fabric and cutting different kind of little jags and stuff into that. But here we go, applying this last piece. I like to spread it out as well. Wrap it down that. Anything that's black, right, I'm trying to totally mask that. Like the front here, I have these kind of red dot housings, so I may mask those with this material as well. Boom. Okay, so there is my base layer of scrim, making sure, as you guys can see, that muzzle is still black and that objective lens is still black, so that's going to be something we're going to try to defeat here in a little bit. But just overall, trying to break up that outline of that rifle and breaking up as much of that black and kind of contrast as possible of that rifle. So here's your basically your scrimmed out rifle. Next step, we're going to go into adding some stuff to fix veg too. Okay, so next step, you guys can use rubber bands, you can use shock cord, any of this stuff will work. Try to stay away from 550 cord or anything that's not elastic, just because when I talk about applying vegetation, I'm going to be applying it over and over again. So for this, it doesn't matter what length, I'm cutting anywhere between 8 inches to, I'd say, 18 inches of shock cord. All I'm doing, just do an overhand knot, pull my overhead knot, so it's just kind of like a makeshift rubber band. When I apply these rubber bands, I'm basically putting it on, like right here I'll do the muzzle first, and doing it kind of with, I'd say, depending on the size, 3 to 4 wraps, spreading it out over that gun. So there's one, get another one, same thing. Get my shock cord, doing a double overhand. Boom, pull it. That way it's not going to slip or anything, just like a little makeshift rubber band. Sliding this down some more. Once I get that on, I can kind of work it down further onto the gun, spreading it out. I like using the shock cord too because it's a little bit more durable than just these rubber bands, right? For an example here, if I pull on this like as hard as I want, it's not going to break. If I get a rubber band, it'll break. So that's one difference. I would recommend using the shock cord over that rubber band. Notice too, I'm making like a little bit smaller bands for up here near the optic. When I do this, I'm trying to be kind of as deliberate as I can, staying away from those turrets, making sure the rubber band and stuff stays in front. Okay. See here, pull out some more, I can cut another one. Just get my cord, probably about 12 inches or so, a little bit longer. Pull it, tie my knot. Knots in there. I basically just have this section left that's not rubber banded, so bring it all the way back right here. We'll do one more just to be safe. Alrighty. So doing a couple loops over here, maybe do a third one just to be safe. Stretch it all the way back. Just kind of start to unravel those things. Pretty crazy. Already hiding. We got dude back here. one with nature. Camouflage is an art. All right, so basically here I have all my rubber bands and stuff on my gun. It's all vegged up with this artificial stuff. Next thing is going to be the actual vegetation. So again, just kind of a look, have that can all the way back to the elevation and windage turrets of my gun, breaking up that silhouette as much as possible. Okay, move this camera so you guys can see. Out here I have kind of a little pasture. We have some different grass, some low-lying vegetation. This type stuff that's low, all you want to think about when you're applying it to your gun, where is your gun going to be relative to this baseline, right? So anytime we're doing stalking or recce exercises or live fires or whatever, we'll catch a lot of guys because they don't understand the concept that, hey, there's pine trees and pine boughs up high, but they put them on their gun and they lay down low. That causes an anomaly, or vice versa. Hey, I'm applying this grass or pine needle kind of vegetation here below, and then they're standing up high in the tree. That's breaking up that normal type deal or the baseline. And once we see that break in the baseline, that kind of hones the observer into your position. So, hey, I'm going to be laying in the prone. All I'm going to be using is vegetation. Or, hey, I'm going to be standing up or taking a kneeling shot. I'm using a mixture of grass, pine needles, any type of bushes, that type of stuff that's going to be at that level that I'm at. So here's my rifle again. Just went back there, gathered a bunch of grass. So you'll notice when you guys are picking different type stuff, it'll come out with like these little root balls. If you can pull those off or cut those off, that's going to be a good idea because those are really dark, and that type of stuff could kind of give you away because it's not normally seen in the grass. Okay. With this grass, all I'm doing, pulling out little pieces of it, probably, I don't know, about that size, and then basically just threading it through. So start back here, start towards my optic, pulling some of this stuff, threading it through. Keep in mind as you do this, imagine I just have a tube kind of that runs down here. No vegetation at first, right here on the top. I'll apply that stuff at the very end. Grab a little bit more. Basically just pulling these little rubber bands out that I made, applying in that base layer of grass. Try to make it super secure too, because as you crawl or move through vegetation, this stuff can easily get pulled off. I like to keep about, I'd say, 5 to 6 inches of vegetation sticking out from the rubber band, just to kind of give it that more natural look. If you put it all under to where it looks like this right here, this can also be an anomaly. So just keep that in mind. Here we go. Applying all that vegetation. Okay, so that side, it's a pretty good base layer on that side. I can apply some higher here onto this turret. Same thing as I click it in. Now, another thing that new guys kind of do, when we're applying vegetation, we want to look at how it naturally grows as well, right? So you can see I left kind of this 6 inches or so out, so I'm able to kind of angle it and bend it up some to where it doesn't look totally laid flat. With this, this is kind of easier for that observer to not be able to find you, right? It's hard to see what's going on when that stuff blends in to all that vegetation around it versus it laying flat as you crawl around. Okay, so I'm going to veg up the other side, and then we'll go into what to do next after that. Okay, so got a little bit more grass. Again, just applying it into the weapon system. Make sure you don't have it too high, so anything that's too high, you can pull it out. Take those little small kind of bundles and basically just weave it. Now, once I've done that entire rail, I can start to add in this kind of top row of vegetation here for the optic. Okay, as I do that, making sure you get some of that light stuff, light colored stuff, and making sure you can get stuff that lays flat in there. Basically just making sure it stays nice and tight. Pull it down, keep applying that veg all the way straight down. Okay, so now kind of looking through that muzzle, you can see all the way straight through that optic. It's a clear path all the way to it. The muzzle is kind of hidden in this vegetation, but it also still has some black. So when we get into camo painting and stuff, if you apply a little bit of green camo paint here to the end, that'll kind of mask what's going on right there. So here in this next spot, we'll apply some of that green camo paint. So yeah, I have this muzzle. When you guys are applying the green camo paint, usually these tubes of camo paint work best. It's easy to apply. It's like the best you can use for your face, rather than that stuff that comes in the little open little boxes and stuff. These tubes are far more superior. So all I do, keep that muzzle up there. I'll just get a little dot, or so here on my finger, about that much or so, and then with this black facing spot here of the muzzle, I can pull some of this grass back and vegetation. Just able to apply a kind of light coat there of green on the end of that. Once I wrap all the other stuff around it, that's a little harder to see, a plain black looking muzzle. So here's my fully vegged up rifle. You can still, I'm still able to see what's going on in the chamber, still able to manipulate all the stuff that's on this while keeping kind of a more concealed profile when it comes to shooting, especially when you're in hide or stalking up to an objective. As you guys go to and crawl to different spots, you may have other vegetation, you know, different looking leaves or whatnot. You can apply these to it totally fine, but just know as you guys do this, stuff wilts. So with heat, anything with leaves usually will wilt. Grass will wilt as well. You've probably seen it with like old salad or anything like that, and wilted stuff can kind of have a more dark, unnatural appearance versus the stuff that's really healthy and fresh. So try to be replacing your vegetation as you stalk often, and just kind of assess it as you go, right? If you start to stock up and stuff starts to fall off, you know, stuff gets loose and gets pulled off, I'm always reassessing what's going on with my weapon. All right, guys, so once we have kind of that main layer of vegetation applied to your gun, we still have that optic exposed, right? So we can kind of see here, kind of see through this optic here. All right, so with that, as I see through it, we need to mask that. So easy way to do it, besides using like an ARD or an anti-reflective device, you can get basically some vegetation. Grass usually works the best. I can kind of roll it here in my hands, and then as I do this, I'm starting to make a loop depending on how big your objective lens is. Right now this is an LPVO on this weapon system, so it has a very small objective lens, but this can still work. As I do this, I'm kind of tying a little knot in it, making what's called a little bird's nest, at least we call it. Just kind of wrapping this stuff around, weaving it through the inside, back through the outside, through the inside, back through the outside. So again, this is a real field expedient way to kind of break up that black circle on your gun there, kind of like a little wreath. But all I do, have my optic, it will just kind of squeeze that little guy over that optic. Now another thing, when we talk about looking through your optic and stuff, I'll show you guys here in just a sec, but looking through your optic, you're not going to have just a perfectly crystal clear view to your target, right? And by that I mean there's going to be a little bit of grass and stuff on the perimeter. You still want to have that clear field of view to your target. That's kind of I guess, controlled by all this vegetation on the outside. So thicker the veg is on the top of the rail, harder it is going to be to see through your optic, but you don't want to be able to just have that exposed objective lens. So here we go, I'll spin it around over here so you guys kind of get a better look of it here. There's kind of my bird's nest applied to that objective lens. If I have like a larger scope, 56 or 50 millimeter, these usually can slide on the inside of those, but since this is an LPVO, I made it a little bit bigger so I can kind of clip to the outside. This kind of helps break up that silhouette of a perfect circle as a potential observer was looking at me. Mask some of this longer veg over it, and it's pretty hard to tell. That's a long gun point at you right there. So yeah, that's that. All right, so as you can see right here through the optic, this is basically how it looks. I'm able to still see that reticle pretty clear. I can see some vegetation in that optic, but also the target area is super clear as well. So this is what you're trying to achieve when you look through your scope. As I pan it around here, just so you guys can see it as well. All camouflaged up still. Moving back around, looking through it here again. I'm able to see that reticle scope super clear. Alright guys, so that wraps up the weapon camouflage video. Kind of a basic how-to on what is what with your gun and stuff, vegging it up. But if you guys have any questions that weren't answered, feel free to hit us up in the comments or send us a direct message on any of the social medias. And yeah, hope you guys got something out of it. And as always, stay lethal. See you in the next one.